What is going on, guys? MMA Island team, we got the fight picks, and we got UFC 255 headlined by Davison Figueiredo versus Alex Perez. Check out my interview. I'm going to plug that every single time because the dude's a cool guy. We're going to talk about that one. We're talking about Daniel Rodriguez taking on Nicolas Dalby. Wow, man, a lot of things to mention, and I mentioned the fact that I am very happy to be going first because I'm probably going to talk a while about this one because there's a lot of things to mention. So, who do I start this off by talking about? I'm going to start this off by talking about Nicolas Dalby. So last time we saw Nicolas Dalby, he was a huge favorite against Jesse Ronson. And a couple of things to mention about that fight in general.
I want to talk about that fight.
He was a huge favorite. I picked Jesse Ronson just because I like the submission styles of Jesse Ronson. And what do you know? Jesse Ronson drops him and then chokes him out.
And tests positive for steroids.
There you go. Jesse Ronson actually just tested positive for PEDs, I guess.
Lettuce, ice cubes, PEDs. Get out of here, Jesse Ronson.
20 months from USADA, which, damn, that sucks. But, so Nicolas Dalby, I guess, I don't know if they're talking about getting rid of that one to a no contest or whatever. I would think that if they made wins like Jamal Hill over Klidson Abreu's fight a no contest, I would think.
Watch my interview with Jamal Hill. It's really good.
That was a very good interview. I actually watched that one last night.
Thank you.
But definitely check that one out. And so talking about Nicolas Dalby, man, it was kind of weird to see that. And another thing I think people don't take into factor enough about Nicolas Dalby is that he's 36 years old. Every time I mention this, every time I'm talking to casuals and I'm like, oh, man, he's pretty old. He's 39. They're like, that's not old. And I'm like, okay, talking about fighter perspective. And 36 years old is not old, but you're past your prime for sure. And being a guy who just did not look the greatest in his last fight, I think that's one thing that I'm taking into play here. And not to mention Daniel Rodriguez. I am picking Daniel Rodriguez to make it a little bit clearer, but Daniel Rodriguez is a beast. What a beast D-Rod is. Seeing him against Tim Means, a guy who is, I think, severely underrated throughout his career. The standing guillotine choke, man. Wow, that was awesome. And then you got him taking on Gabriel Green, who he looked so good in that fight. And I know it went the distance, but yeah, he looked very, very good in that fight. And then he goes on to face Dwight Grant in one of my favorite weird scenarios, probably up there with James Krause taking on Trevin Giles.
It was a classic. That fight was a classic Tyone stoppage.
But it was a very, very interesting. I have a lot to say about Tyone, man. I like this dude. You
like Chris Tyone? I hate Chris Tyone. I hate him. Let's not get into this. Not right now.
We'll talk about it after. But if you guys are interested, hit me up, Headline Island on Instagram. I'm getting way too off topic, but that's a trend here anyway. So the Dwight Grant fight, very interesting scenario. They lose both of their opponents the day of the fight, and then they end up fighting each other. So ours the day of the weigh-ins. And what do you know? Dwight Grant pretty well drops Daniel Rodriguez. Either that or he rocked him. He dropped him. Wow. So he blasted D-Rod. And one thing I did not expect whatsoever, I picked D-Rod in pretty high confidence. And then what do you know, man? I screamed so loud when this happened. D-Rod blasts Dwight Grant right back. And that fight ends in the first round. And one of my favorite rounds of the year. Awesome. Up there with Dustin Poirier, Dan Hooker, round 2 for me.
Yeah.
That was awesome. What an awesome round. Back and forth, just so action-packed. Great fight. And for me, it's kind of interesting to see that this fight was matched up because you see, so wasn't there?
It wasn't supposed to. Yeah. Louis Cauchy's brother Orion was supposed to fight Dalby, and Daniel Rodriguez, I forget who he was supposed to fight. Actually, let me check here. I can check in just one second. Daniel Rodriguez was supposed to fight, if Tapology can scroll down, Brian Barberena.
Yes, that's right, on the 14th card, the November 14th card. So This is what's interesting to me. You see a guy, so the Daniel Rodriguez-Brian Barberena fight, that makes sense. That makes sense to me, just because Brian Barberena has been known to be a guy who just throws down. Coming off of a win as well against a guy who I know he's 0-2 in the UFC, but I hold in pretty high regard. But, man, D-Rod, that fight makes sense. D-Rod versus Barberena, that makes sense. Nicolas Dalby versus Orion Cauchy, that makes sense as well. The guy's 7-0. We don't know too much about him yet. He could easily lose the next few fights because he's 7-0. We don't know too much about him. Plenty of fighters have started their careers 7-0 and then fall out from there. And I know I mentioned how high I hold 7-0 in the first fight pick video, but it's different when you're facing a guy in Nicolas Dalby and you're facing a guy who's been proven in the UFC. And I think Nicolas Dalby, just because he lost recently, doesn't mean we shouldn't hold him in pretty high regard. Obviously, he's only 2 fights in, but I don't know, man. This fight just doesn't make sense to me. I think Daniel Rodriguez, Brian Barberena is up here. Nicolas Dalby and Orion Koshi is down here, which I think makes sense. So then when they lose their opponents and they get kind of matched up here, I think that got to favor Daniel Rodriguez in this one just because the dude's a beast. And I love my Jesse Ronson pick and obviously PEDs we know, but I did like that pick a lot. So it's kind of weird, and I do favor D-Rod way over Jesse Ronson just because I think D-Rod is a master, and I know he's 13-1, but just the dude has looked so good. So I'm going with Daniel Rodriguez, pretty high confidence from my side, but yeah, I'll pass it on to Zach to start us off, to finish us off rather.
Yes. I'm also going to go Daniel Rodriguez. I like to say my pick at the start and then explain myself after. Now, I'm a big fan of Daniel Rodriguez, even though the man has stood me up for an interview twice. I was sitting there waiting for him to join the Zoom meeting for 40 minutes on 2 separate occasions, but that's getting off topic. Daniel Rodriguez, I'd still want to interview you. Hit me up. But he's really good everywhere. That's the thing with Daniel Rodriguez. His striking volume and power, excellent. His jiu-jitsu, excellent. I mean, he trains at a 10th planet. And you know those 10 planet guys, their jiu-jitsu is off the wall. They're kind of the wild children of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, as their leader is Eddie Bravo. And if you know Eddie Bravo, you know everything you have to know about 10th planet. And Nicolas Dalby is kind of a conventional striker. He has that karate stance. He throws a lot of cool stuff. And when it goes to the ground, he's not exactly the best. So I do expect this fight to stay standing, but his chin issues are apparent. This guy got dropped and knocked out by a lightweight fighting up at welterweight. I mean, it was a clean shot to the chin, but that shouldn't knock you out. And Daniel Rodriguez hits a lot harder.
Down. I don't know if he didn't get knocked out. He saved it.
Well, he was technically unconscious before the choke, and then he woke up. For sure. Daniel Rodriguez hits a lot harder than Jesse Ronson. He is an absolute tank, and he does not get tired either. He will throw so many strikes. It's honestly ridiculous. 175 in his fight against Gabe Green, and the fight with Dwight Grant was also insane. And beating Tim Means, that is a great way to get your name out there in the UFC. He is 3-0 in his UFC tenure so far, and he also looked really good in his Contender Series fight back in Season 3. I just think that he's too well-rounded for Nicolas Dalby. I think Dalby's precision striking is solid, and I think that he may be able to coast to a decision, but that's all he can do. He cannot finish Daniel Rodriguez. If Dwight Grant couldn't finish him with that punch, then Dalby doesn't have a chance because Dwight Grant hits so much harder than Nicolas Dalby does, and Daniel Rodriguez hits a lot harder than Dwight Grant, as we can see, because he kept him down. So I think that the volume, the power, the forward pressure, that's another thing Daniel Rodriguez does really well. Forward pressuring. It's excellent. If you watch him fight, he imposes his will in the octagon. It's awesome to see. And just everything tells me that Daniel Rodriguez is going to win this fight. And it pains me because I like Nicolas Dalby. I like him a lot. I like his comeback story. And the fact that he has a draw with Darren Till, that's kind of cool. But I have to pick D-Rod. I just have to.
Well, so we got an agreement on this one. Yeah, man, interesting matchup. I wouldn't say so much fight, just because it's pretty, in my eyes, it'll be pretty one-sided for D-Rod. But hopefully it can put up a good fight, and hopefully they go the distance. And it's back and forth. We see a little bit of ground game, as I love to always see, but who knows? But we'll leave it to the fighters. But yeah, man, make sure you guys are letting us know what you guys think. If you guys got Nicolas Dalby, man, make sure you guys are letting us know. The dude's looked impressive throughout his career. Sure, and maybe not his last one, but yeah, the dude's looked pretty good throughout his career. So yeah, man, point is, man, make sure you guys are letting us know what you guys think in the comments, liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and make sure you guys check out the other Fight Pick videos.